The Perspectives project is about trying to figure out how to create relationship models to provide a basis for understanding and insights to promote more effective action. It's absolutely not about Kumu. Kumu is just a vehicle that's being used at the moment in a trial and learning mode to see what we can figure out how to accomplish. So that within this context, every element that's added to the Perspectives project map is a perspective, or it's a systems archetype, or there's a couple in here someplace that are just about the environment itself. But for each one of the perspectives that gets added, it has a description. There might be a video or a presentation, a link to the model itself, a overview picture of what the relationship model looks like, some references, and then the element is actually typed as to if it's an archetype, a context, and a subject, and we're trying to figure out whether we can also add tags, and I'll show you why in a moment. Though what typically happens is that when people develop relationship models, they become so enamored with their models that they show them to other people, and people are typically just overwhelmed by them and wish that somebody hadn't have sent them to begin with. While the person who developed them, there was actually a story that evolved behind the development of the model, which they seldom ever share with anyone. You end up with a picture that looks like this, and you have to try to figure out what it was that they actually implied from all of the labels. Whereas the intent here is to actually, using a presentation or a video, to unfold that relationship model as a story in the same way that you go to the theater and you see a play, one act after another, and in each of those acts there are relationships that evolve between the participants, the players in the act, and those are the links between the elements of the relationship model. So it explains in act by act what the relationships are, and it unfolds a story that allows one to understand what the intent is to imply from the relationship model itself. So that's the understanding part of what we're trying to do in the Perspectives project. It's about findability and usability. So the findability part of it is that all of this content is currently wired together sort of based upon, well, it seems like it's related. But in terms of how it's actually related, there are multiple ways to look at the relationships. So that, as I said, there are archetypes and context and subject. You can come in here and tell it that you want to turn off all of the default links so that all you have are all of the elements, and you can go into the cluster feature and say, I want to cluster this by context and subject, and then go and turn those links on so that it now shows me that set of clustering for this content, which is very different from the default clustering. And then maybe I'm interested in strategy, so that I can come down here and select strategy, and then it tells me that there is a ton of stuff here, and I can go ahead and say I only want the strategy element itself, or I want the stuff that's directly related to it, or that content which is one level away from strategy. So the relationship, or the coding of the content to allow it to be findable from multiple dimensions is currently being developed. We're trying to figure out what makes sense, what makes it usable, and that's where we are at the moment. So, as with all the rest of this stuff, it's a trial and learning undertaking, which, at least in this context, all of the elements that are provided are actually systemic in nature, as opposed to this ongoing linear diatribe that we have in discussion groups that simply get thinner and thinner over time until everybody gets bored and goes away. So the idea is to go ahead and begin with a relationship model, and use a discussion to further develop the understanding of that relationship model and evolve it where appropriate, or create a variant on it for some particular reason. And the discussions are here for every element that can be used, and then we'll go ahead and use those discussions to evolve the model, and we can actually edit the discussions and synthesize them so that we weed out all of the chaff. And if you come across an element 6 months after the discussion actually happened, and you go look at the discussion, there's probably 4 or 5 posts that are really relevant to the relationship model, as opposed to 5 miles of garbage that you need to wander through looking for 1 or 2 nuggets if they actually exist. So I invite people to participate in the Perspectives Project. Simply send your Kumu username to me at systemswiki@gmail.com. If you don't have a Kumu username, you can get one for free at kumu.io/signup. And there's a overview video of the project at systemswiki.org. So see you in another video soon. Bye.